I'm Hayley Kay for G-Vlog here at the Grand Theatre, Blackpool. Now, I'm joined by two very special guests, our theatre archivists, Linda and Geoff Tolson. Now, how long have you two been the archivists here at the theatre?
Oh, that's quite a hard one. We've been telling the Grand Theatre story from the late 70s, when we were trying to obviously purchase the theatre from the EMI company. But we've actually had the title Archivist since 1995.
Now, I was wondering, obviously we're sitting sort of in the stalls, or we're stood in the stalls. How different would this have looked to when the theatre opened? Because when did the theatre open?
It was 1894,
Oh, okay.
a long time ago, and it would have looked more or less intact from upwards. But on this floor, the floor of the stalls, there would only been 4 rows of seats.
Oh, okay.
Behind that, it was flat, and an audience could come in at the back, didn't pay as much money, obviously, but they had to stand.
Ah, so that's like the cheap seats is
So
standing.
there we are, the
Exactly.
pit. A little bit like the Albert Hall when
Yeah.
we watched the last night of the proms. But if you came in through that door, you will be rather more affluent and you will be sitting in the posh seats at the front.
The orchestra
stalls.
Ah, I didn't know that. Now, just another question. People mention Frank Matcham and the fact he designed this theatre, but for those people that don't know who he was, what more can you tell us about him?
Oh, Frank Matcham, very famous theatre architect. He designed or remodelled over 150 theatres in this country. Sadly, there's only about 17 or so left. Progress. Virtually untrained. He worked with architects, but he didn't actually attend any schooling for it. So he learnt on the job. He built, amongst other theatres, this one being, we think, is the best example of his work, he built the London Palladium.
Wow.
And the Lyric at Hammersmith, a whole host, the Belfast Opera House, the Buxton Opera House, prolific designer and builder of theatres, a very gifted man.
Well, they do say of all his theatres that are surviving, this is the most intact.
Ah.
So were he to come into his theatre today, apart from the seating, as Geoff has explained, he would recognise it as his work. The thing that everybody remembers about Frank Matcham, he is the architect who eliminated pillars. And we've all been to the theatre and found ourselves with a restricted view.
Yeah.
Frank Matcham thought that was an absolute nonsense, and he actually designed a way of keeping up those balconies and putting the pillars right to the back rather than on the leading edge. And there they're not going to interfere with anybody's view. Partially cantilevered.
So I hear, Geoff, on opening night of the theatre, am I right in thinking Lady Queensberry was in attendance?
Yes, she was actually sitting in this box.
Oh, okay.
Queen Victoria would have come, but Prince Albert had died and she didn't go out much after that. So she sent Lady Queensberry as her representative. And she was in this box. The opposite box, on the other side of the auditorium, we had the man who had built the theatre, Frank Matcham, and the owner of the theatre, Thomas Sargentson. So they were over there, and she was over here, and the audience could see them.
What about any other royal visitors to the Grand Theatre over the years?
Oh, 1981, our opening gala in May of that year, Prince Charles came, and he sat in this box.
Ah, okay.
And
So,
subsequently we had Prince Edward as well.
Yes, he came to a matinee. He was working for Andrew Lloyd Webber at the time, wasn't he?
He was.
Came to a matinee.
so obviously, you know, people here primarily see the show and they perhaps don't look around. Is there any things that they miss? Any sort of little hidden gems that they might miss while they're sitting here?
Oh, let me have a look. Well, we've talked about the boxes. If we look at the box over there, we have a bust there, and that is a bust of the musician Handel. This theatre has two main elements, two main preoccupations: to always show the best in the arts and in music. So there we've got the music side of the theatre, and if we were able to look, and when you come to the theatre you'll obviously be able to see for yourself, over this box we have a bust of Shakespeare.
Ah, okay.
So we've got the drama and we've got the music. If your eyes go up, we have 4 beautiful ladies, look almost as if they are holding up the prow of a ship, but they're holding up the dome. 1, 2, 3, and there's one over us here. They're known as caryatids. Very, very beautiful, but we really would need to go much higher
up
to see
because
them.
the ceiling is really is for me is the favourite. You can't help but have a proper look up. What more can you tell us? Because I don't really know a great
deal.
deal.
It is the star of the show. This, interestingly, probably isn't the 1894 ceiling. Frank Matcham tended to put his buildings up very quickly. It took him 9 months to do this one. So his workmen will be walking out through this door here as the audience were coming in here.
Wow.
So that ceiling was possibly, by the Gazette of the time, a plainer ceiling. But a couple of years later, he will bring back his artists and they would embellish it, and we would end up with this gorgeous ceiling. Eminent men of the theatre, we have Shakespeare, we have Keats the poet, artists, dramatists, all on the ceiling. Restored in 2002, a big platform was put across with steps going up, and the conservators were able to walk up the steps, climb onto the platform and restore the ceiling while productions were going on stage.
So impressive.
If we hadn't done that, we would have had to close the theatre for 12 months.
Wow.
But when we do our full tour, then obviously we take you much higher,
Yeah.
and you can see that gorgeous ceiling in detail.
So, Geoff, tell us why we have the Iron Curtain.
The Iron Curtain is here for safety reasons. It's called the safety curtain, but in the business, it's called the iron, obviously. If there were an incident on stage or round about here and there was a bit of a fire, we can drop the safety curtain. It seals off the auditorium and all our lovely patrons from any fire, so they can escape quite safely without getting singed.
And this is a piece of sort of history in itself.
It
I mean,
is.
all the stars like to sign it. I know me and the Panto crew have signed it a few times, but to actually come and have a look at it, and I know that other stars like to come and have a look at other people's autographs. So, Linda, we're standing on the stage. They refer to it as a raked stage, but what does that mean for people who don't know?
Well, it's a slope.
Okay.
It's a slope. So if I were to walk to the back of the stage, I could be seen because I obviously would be higher up. And that's quite good if you're dancing and people want to look at your feet doing your tap dance or whatever. People can be seen at the back of the stage from the auditorium.
And what about this area to the side?
That's the prompt corner, usually just simply nowadays called the corner. That's the centre of activity, if you like, when the play or the show of any kind is running, because that's where it's run from. They give the cues from there, and they operate the sound for the tannoy system. All the dressing rooms have their own loudspeakers in, so they can hear what's going on. Also on the corner, there's a flat screen monitor, because at the back of the upper circle, we have a camera. So whoever's on the corner there, instead of having to squint sideways all the time, can simply look up, and there's the monitor showing them what's happening on stage.
I think people would be fascinated if they saw how busy that was, that area, when a show's on stage. So before we go, what would you say are the most popular things that you get asked on one of your theatre tours?
What famous names have appeared on stage? That's usually
give us a couple of.
The funny thing is, we usually sort of say, virtually anybody who has been anybody in the theatre world has appeared on this stage. And one time somebody said, Laurence Olivier hasn't appeared. He was quite true. But he did come. He produced or directed a production of The Skin of Our Teeth with his wife, his then wife, Vivian Lee, and he was at the back of the auditorium prowling up and down, counting the house probably, and seeing what the audience's reaction to this slightly unusual play. It was a bit ahead of its time. So yes, he never appeared on stage, but yes, he came.
Because we're such a diverse theatre, we just have so many different people coming, you know, the big Shakespearean actors, the singers, Vera Lynn, you know, all the old days. But the modern people now, Paloma Faith started out here. Jenna Coleman from Doctor Who, she started out when she was at school in our studio.
The youth theatre.
David Tennant, a very young David Tennant. Yes, they've all been here.
Any other questions that are really popular, or is that the main one?
I think people want to know why it is such a loved theatre. And what I think is it's so intimate. It's quite large. We seat over 1,000 people, but it is so intimate. And the secret is the wonderful curve of those balconies.
Yep.
They curve round, and not only do they curve, it's an inverted curve, but they slope towards the stage, so that if you're standing here, and you must know this yourself, Hayley, if you're standing here, you almost feel that the audience are holding you in a warm embrace.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. You come on the stage and you just feel like there's magic in the air, like you can reach out and touch them. They're so close.
Absolutely.
It's lovely. Well, thank you so much for giving me a little sneak behind the curtain today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've learned something too. I really have learned something. And if you want to get involved and join Linda and Geoff on one of their heritage tours, well, you can visit our website. It's blackpoolgrand.co.uk. You can call the box office on 01253 290 190. I've been Hayley Kay for G-Vlog.